This episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast is sponsored by the Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for Perimenopausal Women. As a woman in the modern world, our hormones are taking a battering. They're impacted by the food we eat, the toxins we're exposed to, such as when we eat out of plastic takeaway containers, or even worse, reheat food in them. Please don't do this. If you're handling FPOS receipts, filling the car with fuel, eating non-organic produce that hasn't been washed effectively, plus so much more things add to our toxic load every day. Even though our bodies are designed to effectively manage toxins, they haven't evolved as quickly as our toxic world has, unfortunately. So our body does need support. Symptoms such as stubborn weight gain, fatigue, disrupted periods, irritability, and gut health issues can be a sign that you'd benefit from a gentle detox. And that's why I developed the Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for Perimenopausal Women. This free guide has an abundance of information to get you started on your very own DIY detox. And if you'd like to upgrade to VIP, it's only $47 for a limited time. I used to sell this program for $247. The upgrade gives you the recipes, including plenty of plant-based options, the meal planner, the shopping list template, the video workshop, and so much more. Click the link in the show notes to learn more now. Take care of your hormones. They are a critical part of your health as a woman. Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. Hello, gorgeous one, and welcome to the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I am going to do a podcast today that's a pure nutrition-based podcast because I did my Q&A last week on creatine and it kind of blew up. So I kind of have the impression that having nutrition-based podcast eps every now and again might be really helpful for you. And I mean, I am a nutritionist, so, and our nutrition plays a huge influence on our hormones at any stage of life, including perimenopause and menopause. And I just thought today I might focus on two specific nutrients, and that is iron and calcium. And there's a couple of reasons I'm putting these two together, and that's going to become rather obvious as I move through the podcast today. So let's start talking about it. Essentially, iron and calcium, they're two essential minerals, and they help our body function really well, and they're especially critical at this time of life in peri and menopause. As well as some of the more obvious kind of benefits of these nutrients, such as energy with iron, bone health with calcium, they can also significantly impact how we feel. They actually have an impact on our mood. And so if we get the right amounts and have them at the right times, that can really help improve our mood in this time of our lives. So here's the thing I just mentioned about timing, because iron and calcium really don't play very nicely together when it comes to absorption if you're eating them at the same time. When you're consuming kind of large amounts at the same meal, calcium can block your body from absorbing your iron. And you may have heard this about, I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, that iron can be disrupted from absorption if you take zinc at the same time, or if you have tannin-containing drinks such as cola or coffee or tea or dark herbal teas, that kind of thing. Dark beverages have tannins in them generally, and that can block your body from absorbing iron. And calcium also can block your body from absorbing iron, and especially the non-heme iron. So you may not know this, but we have heme sources of iron. They're the animal sources, and we have non-heme sources of iron, and they're from plant-based sources like spinach and lentils and things like that. So this doesn't mean that you should avoid calcium-rich foods, of course. It just means that spacing out your calcium and your iron intake, especially if you have a need for iron. So if you know your iron is low, if you are having heavy periods, then definitely you need to really take note of the information in this podcast. So, if you have a calcium-rich breakfast, let's just say for ease of terminology, a dairy-rich breakfast, then you would opt perhaps for an iron-rich lunch. And that gives your body the best chance to absorb both of these nutrients effectively so that you're not missing out. And if you want a bit of the science behind why iron and calcium don't always get along regarding absorption, the key issue is how both of these minerals are absorbed in the small intestine, okay? So iron, and especially non-heme iron from plant sources, and calcium compete for the same absorption pathways in the body. Calcium can inhibit iron transport across the intestinal cells by blocking, and don't switch off here, by blocking the divalent metal transporter 1 or DMT1. So the DMT1 brings non-heme iron into the bloodstream. And it can be blocked especially when large doses of calcium are consumed at the same time as iron-rich foods. And the interaction is most significant with the non-heme iron because it has a lower bioavailability, so a lower ability to be absorbed into the body than heme iron anyway. Heme iron actually uses a different absorption pathway, so calcium has less of an effect on it. However, the absorption of non-heme iron can drop significantly and even up to 50% when consumed with high calcium foods. So additionally, calcium in the digestive tract actually alters the pH balance, okay? So it makes the environment less acidic. Iron is more soluble and better absorbed in acidic conditions, which means calcium's neutralizing effect further reduces the iron absorption process. So you can see there's a few factors at play here. And it doesn't mean that, if I'm iron deficient, I'm not going to have calcium-rich foods. Of course not. It just means that the timing of these foods really matters. And separating the calcium and the iron-rich meals by a few hours helps each mineral absorb without interference. So yeah, as I said, having a calcium-rich brekkie and an iron-rich lunch can help balance out that absorption. And it's really easy to find lists of calcium-rich foods. It's not always dairy, by the way, and iron-rich foods. If you literally just Google iron-rich foods, you will get a whole list. There's no need for me to list those items there. And again, with iron-rich foods, it's not just meat-based sources. Even though the non-heme or the plant-based sources of iron can be a little bit more difficult for the body to absorb, they are still absolutely valid and important sources of our iron rather. So let's talk about mood, as I mentioned before. So specifically iron. Iron plays a big role in our energy levels. I think everyone pretty much knows that. It's responsible for the red blood cells to carry oxygen throughout the body, take it into our cells. And, so if you're low on iron, you might be fatigued, you might feel weak, you might be foggy in the mind, makes it hard to focus on tasks. But also beyond that sort of energy role that iron is crucial for producing our brain chemicals, our neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. And they are two chemicals that regulate mood. So a shortage of iron in your body can throw off your balance of these neurotransmitters that leads to symptoms like irritability, anxiety, even depression, which is why you really need to make sure that if you are iron deficient, so firstly, know if you're iron deficient or not. And if you are, you want to make sure you're getting enough of those iron-rich foods, and you want to make sure that you're absorbing those iron-rich foods. So if you have gut health issues, that is something that needs to be addressed. If you like to have coffee with your meals, which is very, very popular, then that might be blocking your iron absorption as well. So you might need to split that out a bit. And particularly if you're on an iron supplement, please do not take your iron supplement within 2 hours of having a coffee or a tea in the morning. I see this all the time. You are wasting your money with that iron supplement if you're going to eat it like that, or take it like that, not necessarily eat it like that. So ensuring you get enough iron in perimenopause and menopause is really important, because there are mood changes often anyway with the imbalance of hormones. There's also fatigue. So when you layer those nutrient deficiencies on top of this, it's a problem, but one that's easily solved just by understanding and educating yourself about how nutrients are absorbed in the body. So, I mean, who's at risk for iron deficiency? Oh my gosh, it's like an epidemic of iron deficiency over the past few years. And have you noticed this? Have you experienced this? Perhaps you have friends that are having iron infusions. I mean, so many of the women that I see in clinic have had iron infusions or are thinking about having iron infusions. I mean, this can be for multiple reasons. And of course, heavy periods is one of the factors that is relatively common in perimenopausal women, and that can be from fibroids, it can be from adenomyosis, endometriosis, and the hormone changes that happen in perimenopause. So all of these can be addressed, these conditions can be addressed or at least improved with personalized nutrition and herbal medicine. So that's, one really positive thing is, even if is always in naturopathy, we're wanting to get to the underlying cause. And we don't just want to be, giving you iron supplements, or if you're under the care of a doctor, having iron infusions without understanding why this is happening, why you're losing iron, or why you're not absorbing iron. So if you're one of the people that's chronically low in iron, but you don't have heavy periods, or perhaps you're in menopause and you don't have periods at all, then we need to know, why is this happening? Because, we want to make sure our iron levels are good for so many of the reasons that I've already mentioned. So if you follow a predominantly plant-based diet, then you'll be receiving non-heme iron in your food. So you can improve the absorption of this by increasing your intake of iron-rich foods like lentils and tofu and eggs and nuts and seeds, leafy greens, dried apricots, etc. And you eat them with vitamin C-rich foods. So obviously oranges, but also strawberries, capsicum, guava, black currants, those sorts of things will really help to boost your absorption of iron. So whether that's non-heme iron or heme iron, they both need vitamin C to support their absorption. So let's talk about calcium. So calcium's best known, I think, for its role in maintaining, strong bones and teeth. But it's also really important for our electrolyte balance. It's important for the heart. There's many different roles that calcium has in our bodies, and it's crucial throughout your lifespan. But in perimenopause and menopause, it can be particularly challenging for bone health, because the drop in estrogen and progesterone contributes to a loss of bone density. And on average, women lose around 10% of their bone density in the first 5 years post-menopause. It's a lot. And the thing is, it's completely asymptomatic until you have a fracture from a light injury, like a fall where you really shouldn't break a bone, you break a bone. And that's often the first time women actually realize they've got a lack of, or a loss of rather, bone density. And I know if you've been following me for a while, I did talk probably a couple of months ago now about my own journey with a diagnosis of osteopenia, which absolutely shocked me. And it's only because I have a very proactive menopause GP, and I had already asked my other more sort of day-to-day GP if I could get a bone scan, and she said to me, you have no risk factors, you do not need one. And when I went to my menopause GP to have a chat to her about things, she said to me, have you had a bone scan? I went, no. And she goes, right, you got to go and get one. And that showed that I had osteopenia. And Without knowing that, I'd have just been going along on my merry way, thinking that everything was fine because I don't really have risk factors. And now that I know this, I can make the changes needed to ensure that I'm making my bones stronger. And I cannot tell you how many women in their 40s and 50s and beyond that I speak to that have never been offered a bone scan. So please, if you are in that category, go and talk to your GP and ask them for one. If they say you don't have any risk factors, say, but I want one anyway. Because if you know now, before you progress to osteoporosis, because osteopenia is like the pre-osteoporosis, if you like, then you can really do things now that will support your bone health and actually reverse osteopenia, which is awesome. So anyway, I've got on my little soapbox there for a minute. So let's talk about calcium and mental health, because calcium isn't just about our bones. There's growing evidence that calcium also plays a role in our mental health. And calcium, we already know that calcium is involved in the nervous system. It helps our nerve cells communicate. And we know that low calcium levels have been linked to mood changes, irritability, and in extreme cases, depression. So ensuring you get enough calcium through your diet or maybe supplements if you've been recommended to have them by your GP. I'm a little bit on the fence with calcium supplements myself. There is a limited amount of absorption. You can only absorb roughly 600 milligrams at a time. So if you're taking really high dose, you're probably wasting your money. And, really with a well-planned diet, you should be able to get enough calcium on a daily basis, but you want to make sure you are and you're thinking about what you're eating. If you're not quite sure, then have a chat to a nutritionist, engage me, get a personalized nutrition plan so you're getting exactly what you need. Because you want to keep your bones in good shape. You want to keep your mood in good shape because, you've got enough going on in your life without having to worry about that, particularly in peri and menopause. So let me give you 5 steps to improve your iron and calcium levels right now. These are things you can do straight away without having to see a nutritionist. Although I always strongly advise it because honestly, when I did my training, I was amazed at how much I didn't know about nutrition. Everything was so confusing on the internet, and that's actually what inspired me to study nutrition. Is I was so confused about what to eat myself. And I thought, there's going to be the perfect diet, in inverted commas, that suits everyone. And that's actually not true. Everyone is so different. And that's why I've now specialized in personalized nutrition, because I really believe that we are all different. We have different needs. And that if we get the diet right, it makes our health and our life so much better. But anyway, again, on my soapbox again. So my 5 steps to improve iron and calcium levels right now. Firstly, time your meals smartly, as I've just discussed. Eat your calcium-rich foods and your iron-rich foods at different times. So you can have a calcium-rich breakfast, for example. I just use that for breakfast because it's often easier. That's when people are having things like yogurt, nuts and seeds, like a granola or something like that. And an iron-rich lunch is often a little easier. Adding vitamin C, so pairing sources of iron, that's food sources of iron, with vitamin C rich foods to improve absorption. So things like capsicum, tomatoes, citrus to your iron rich meals. And that's so easy, just to do a little squirt of, lemon juice over your greens. That will improve the absorption. It's adding capsicum to your salad. This is so easy to do if you put some thought into it. Also include vitamin D foods. Now, there are limited foods that actually have a decent level of vitamin D in them. Foods like fatty fish, like salmon, sardines, eggs, mushrooms, and there's a little trick with mushrooms. You can pop them in sunlight, and that will actually improve their vitamin D levels. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And then plus spending time in the sun daily, if possible, without coverage. So I grew up in Queensland where we had the sun safe message drilled into us as kids. And I also had a grandfather with severe skin cancer. So I'm very, very sun smart, probably to my detriment. Maybe that's why I have osteopenia when I think about it. But yeah, spending some time with exposed skin, and I always recommend exposing some skin that doesn't normally see a lot of sun, because my understanding about skin cancer is that there is a correlation between the number of hours you've spent in the sun over your lifetime up to the time you get diagnosed with it. Once you hit that, your number of hours, you're more likely to get skin cancer. So like your forearms would see a fair bit of sun, your chest, your neck, your face, your hands, but perhaps not your tummy, perhaps not the upper part of your legs. So I always recommend, if you can use part of the skin that doesn't see a lot of sun and expose it to the sun, say in the morning or the afternoon, but not in the middle of the day. Definitely not between kind of 10 and 2, depending where you are in the country. And overseas, it might be a little different. I know in Australia, we have daylight savings across the country, so the timing is a little different depending on where you live. So yeah, having some some exposed skin time every day is ideal, maybe for 10 to 20 minutes. Also incorporating weight-bearing exercise. So, because the thing is, having strong bones isn't just about having calcium. You need to move the body in a way that stresses your bones. So brisk walking, jogging, strength training can all help maintain bone density, and it's essential to keep your body moving in perimenopause and menopause. Also avoiding iron blockers. So as I mentioned before, your darker colored beverages are probably one of the key ones. So coffee, tea, your darker herbal teas, cola, red wine, have these tannins that block your iron receptors when you have these with food. If you struggle with iron deficiency, really reassess your intake of these kinds of beverages. Make sure you're taking your iron supplement with food. Make sure you're taking your iron supplement away from those dark colored beverages and also calcium-rich meals. So the upshot of all of this is that having the right nutrient base and timing and just knowledge can really help with your absorption of particular nutrients. In this case, it's iron and calcium. And, iron and calcium, you may not have known this, can really help keep you energized and in a good mood. And this is important. So balancing these two essential nutrients, making a few strategic changes to your diet can support your body and mind, may reduce the need for supplementation, which is awesome. And if you want to know more about this, and you're thinking, well, maybe I need some personalized nutrition, absolutely get in touch. I offer free introduction calls where we can have a chat. I can talk to you about where you're at health-wise, what your needs are, and then whether or not what I do can help you. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message through the podcast, if that link is available to you, depending on which podcast app you're using. Or you can message me on Instagram at Susie Garden Wellness. That's SUSIE. And otherwise, hello@susiegarden.com via email. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I'll try and include a few more nutrient kind of focused pods because I love talking about it, and I hope you love listening to it as well. Have a great week. I'll be back on Thursday with Q&A. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts or the follow button if you're on Spotify so that you get each new episode delivered to you every week. If you like free stuff, then head to the show notes and click the link to receive my free Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for perimenopausal women. Or if you'd like to continue the discussion, head over to Instagram and DM me at Susie Garden Wellness. I'd love to connect with you.